Alright, Wednesday folks. Preseason is in full swing and Celtic are already lifting silverware. It might be a friendly trophy, but it's still a win, still a cup, and still a sign that the boys are getting themselves in gear ahead of the proper stuff. Last night, Celtic saw off Cork City by 2-1 in Ireland, and with that result, they claimed the inaugural Cork Super Cup. Now, it might not be the Champions League, but it's always good to start preseason with a bit of success, and maybe, just maybe, this is the first step toward a wee preseason treble if everything goes to plan. Plenty to break down from the match, and even more to unpack in terms of news. We're talking post-match words from the Gaffer squad, updates some key injuries, and a couple of players on the move. But let's start with the game itself, because there's a lot to say about how the team looked out there, the individual performances, and some early signs that Brendan Rodgers is starting to shape this squad into something a bit sharper than what we saw at the back end of last season. First off, big shout out to the Celtic supporters making the effort to follow this team no matter where they go. Whether you were up at 3 in the morning in Australia like our pal Scott, or catching the replay at a more humane hour on Celtic TV, it's clear the passion doesn't sleep. Scott, by the way, might still be emotionally recovering from that mist. Penalty by Alistair Johnston in the last real competitive outing, but fair play to him. Up at the crack of dawn to watch a preseason friendly. That's real dedication, mate. That's the kind of stuff that makes this club special. Now about the starting 11. In goals, we had Vanalo back between the sticks. The back four was made up of Kobe Donovan, who ended up bagging the winner. At right back with Dane Murray and Austin Trusty in the center, a new signing Hayato Inamura slotting in on the left. In midfield, we had Callum McGregor holding things down with Luke McCowan and Ari Engels ahead of him. James Forrest returned to action out on the right wing. Ben Summers took up position on the left, and leading the line was Johnny Kenny. First half solid controlled, but with a few expected preseason rough edges. There were some heavy touches, few overhit passes, and the pitch maybe wasn't helping either. Looked like the ball was either sticking to the turf or running away from players at times. That said, the tempo was decent, the structure was there, and it's always going to be a bit stop-start this early on in a campaign. But let's be honest, we've seen far worse in early July. One of the standout talking points from the first 45 was definitely Hayato Inamura. Now here's a lad who's been playing centre-back over in Japan, but he found himself at left-back last night. Maybe not his natural role anymore, but you wouldn't have known it by watching him. His fitness is clearly up to scratch. No surprise, considering he's coming in mid-season from the J League, and what really impressed was how comfortably he slotted into Celtic's style of play. Quick touches, forward-thinking passes, always trying to link up and push the play on. Even when the ball came under pressure, he didn't panic. One-touch stuff, confident in possession, and always looking to contribute going forward. He even got stuck into a big aerial duel and came out on top, then later bailed out Trusty after a bit of a blunder near the byline. That kind of awareness and willingness to cover his teammates speaks volumes. There was also that one moment, a low cross fizzing across the face of goal, where all it needed was the slightest of touches and it was in the back of the net. Didn't happen this time, but it's the sort of delivery that gets fans excited. He might have come in as a center back, but based on that performance, Brendan might be thinking twice before shipping him out on loan, like many expected. And speaking of Brendan Rodgers, he made some telling comments after the match. He admitted that the original plan was to bring Inamura and have a look at him and probably send him out for more game time. But what he's seen so far has been impressive. Smooth on the ball, positive in his passing, and most importantly, surprising the coaching staff in a good way. So while it's early days, and let's be honest, he wasn't exactly tested defensively against Cork City, the signs are promising. And with a bit of luck, he might just force his way into Rodgers' plans, at least until January. It's a long window, plenty can still happen, but there's clearly a space there if he keeps showing up. Now, Luke McCowan, cracking finish on his goal. Clean strike, confident, and a good reminder of the quality he's got in the final third. As for Ben Summers, he was deployed out wide on the left, which isn't a role we're used to seeing from him. And while there's a sense that his chance to make a lasting impression at Celtic may have come and gone a couple of years ago, he did show flashes of liveliness. There was one neat flick to James Forrest that nearly ended in a goal, and overall, it was a respectable outing from him. On to the second half, and it was a whole new 11 as you'd expect in preseason. No graphic needed for this part because, let's be honest, half of these names are still fresh to most fans. Ross Doohan came in between the sticks, Ben McPherson slotted in at right back with Stephen Welsh, and H. Mitchell Robertson at center back. Adam Montgomery moved into left back, and the midfield trio featured Sean Mardle, Kyle Ure, and Francis Turley, with Turley operating a bit more advanced. On the flanks, we had Thomas Hatton on the right, who definitely grew into the game, and Mitchell Frame on the left. Up front, making his debut was Callum Osmond. Rodgers mentioned after the match that the second half wasn't as clean in possession, and that was pretty clear. But he also noted the fight and resilience from the young squad. They made mistakes, but they battled to win the ball back and still managed to find a way to close out the match. That matters especially when you're blooding younger players into the system. Callum Osmond, even though the Polish wasn't quite there, yet showed a good sense of positioning and willingness to get involved. And Hatton, he really came alive in the back end of the second half, growing in confidence with every touch and causing problems for the Cork defense. Kyle Ure was another one who caught the eye. Lovely left foot, some tidy through balls, including one that nearly came off, if not for the defender sticking tight to Mitchell Frame. Ure's still only 19, but if you're looking at possible squad depth, especially in the midfield, when McGregor needs a rest or we've got a domestic fixture pileup, he's a name that might come into consideration. Now, one of the big disappointments from the night, and it's a tough one to take, was Stephen Welsh. He started the half with a mix-up involving Ross Doohan that led to Cork's goal and then later suffered a shoulder injury. And it's not the first time either. We're talking fourth dislocation now. He played on for about 20 minutes but eventually had to come off clearly in discomfort cradling that arm. Rodgers later said that surgery might be necessary this time. And if that happens, we are probably looking at 6 months out at a minimum, maybe longer. A shoulder reconstruction can mean close to a year on the sidelines, and given that Welsh was already rumored to be on his way out this summer, this injury might put a hold on that completely. It's just a gutting situation. You never want to see a player, especially one who clearly loves the club and has always given everything, go through that kind of setback, particularly in a meaningless friendly. Timing couldn't be worse. You really do feel for him. And then there's Jude Bonner. Maybe some folk were wondering where he was. Turns out he's off to join Scott Brown's United on loan for the season. That's why he didn't feature. Hopefully he gets the minutes. He needs to keep developing because there's talent there. A regular football will do him good. Let's also not underestimate how important it is for Celtic to make these trips abroad. Whether it's Ireland, Australia, Japan, wherever. The connection with the worldwide fan base is massive. For supporters who don't get the chance to make it to Celtic Park often or at all, having the team come to them even for a friendly is something really special. Scott was sharing his own experience from when the Hoops came to Sydney for those matches against Sydney FC and Everton, and he wasn't even involved in the Melbourne CSC at the time. But that tour helped forge those connections. Same story. For fans in Cork, Celtic's global pull is real, and matches like these, even low-stakes ones, help reinforce that bond. Now, news-wise, Gustav Lagerbilke is officially out the door. It's a permanent deal to Braga, with reports suggesting a fee around £2 million plus potential bonuses. Celtic have also secured a 10% sell-on clause, which might bring something back if he gets his career back on track. And to be fair to the lad, he's handled the whole thing with class. Shared a nice message on Instagram thanking everyone at the club, players, staff, and supporters, and wished Celtic all the best. That kind of attitude matters. It didn't work out for him here, but there's no bad blood. Good luck to him. Back to Brendan Rodgers, who had more to say post-match. He touched on a few players, including Benjamin Negron and Kieran Tierney, said he's really excited about Negron, described him as a forward-thinking player with good energy and a strong presence on the pitch. With Tierney, Rodgers was a bit more cautious. Mentioned that KT's gained maturity and experience since his last stint here, but also noted the need to manage him carefully given his injury history. All signs point to a measured reintegration into the squad, maybe limited minutes at first, slowly building him back into full match fitness. And that's where the preseason schedule gets really important. Saturday's match against Estrela de Amadora behind closed doors at Benfica's training campus should give us a first proper look at what could be close to the starting 11 for the season ahead. Most of the international lads are back, with the exception of Alistair Johnston and Lewis Palmer, who are likely to link up with the squad in Portugal. And even though we won't be able to watch that match live, it's still a key step in the preseason process. From there, things step up fast. Sporting Lisbon, Newcastle United Ajax, Champions League level opponents. That's when we'll really start to see how this team is shaping up and where the cracks still need filled. If Saturday marks the real start of preseason, then the rest of this month is where things either fall into place or start to unravel. The rhythm ramps up and the level of opposition shoots through the roof. We're no longer talking about testing young lads against Cork. City, it's now Sporting Lisbon, a team that just won the Portuguese Cup. Then you've got Newcastle United Champions League again, then Ajax. Ajax. Celtic are deliberately lining up tough fixtures, and you can see the thinking behind it. If this squad is going to be ready for Europe for another title race, for everything that comes with being Celtic, then there's no better way to prepare than going toe-to-toe with serious quality. Brendan Rodgers knows that better than anyone. That's why you're seeing this structure in preseason. First, shake off the rust, get a look at the full squad blood, the youngsters, then slowly start blending the internationals back in, the ones who've had extended breaks after summer tournaments or injury rehabs. It's not just about fitness, it's about chemistry, systems, movement, the whole thing clicking into place. And you can already feel a difference compared to last year. There's a sharpness in how we're going about things. It feels like there's a proper plan again. Now on the topic of the returning big names, Kieran Tierney just being back in the building is enough to lift everyone. You see him in training, getting around the lads, laughing sharp on the ball. It feels right. Feels like he never left to be honest. Brendan spoke about how good it is to have him back, but also highlighted the importance of managing him correctly. Let's not forget Tierney's had a rough time with injuries. You don't want to throw him into the fire too quickly. So expect to see him eased in. Maybe 30 minutes here, a half there. But it'll be massive to see him back in the hoops in an actual match again, even if it's just a friendly. And there's others who've looked hungry in training. Rio Hatate, for example, has apparently looked strong since returning. The manager said there's been no issues with his previous injury, and that's massive. A fully fit Hatate is a game changer. Same with Cameron Carter-Vickers, who's now training separately but getting close. The hope is that he's ready just before or just after the Newcastle game, which is only about 10 days away. Getting him back in the spine of the defense will be a huge boost, especially when we're heading into tougher fixtures. Still, a few names who haven't quite rejoined the group, like Alistair Johnston and Luis Palmer, but they'll be part of the squad flying straight from Cork to Portugal. That's right. The team didn't even go back to Glasgow. Straight from one camp into another. It's a good way to keep the momentum going, build that team spirit, and keep everyone together under the same roof. Rodgers is clearly trying to create a tight unit again. A group that sticks together, pushes each other, and learns quickly. The match on Saturday being behind closed doors might seem like a letdown, but it's a calculated move. Focus purely on the football, no distractions, just players, coaches, and 90 minutes of graft in the heat. Speaking of which, if you've seen the temperatures in Portugal lately, you'll know it's not for the faint-hearted. 46 degrees earlier this week. Even by Australian standards, that's brutal. So sunscreen and water breaks might be as important as tactics for this next stretch of preseason. As for new signings, the Grand's name keeps popping up. Brendan seems really enthusiastic about him. Called him dynamic, strong, and a player that gets around the pitch with energy. It's still early days, of course, but if he can slot in with the same confidence Inamura showed, we could be looking at another smart addition. These are the kinds of signings Celtic need to get right. Players with potential, yes, but ones who can contribute right away if needed. There's no time to waste this season. Rangers are strengthening. The league's not going to be handed to us. Every spot in the squad has to be ready to go. You're also seeing that in the way some of the B-team players are being handled. A few of them have looked decent in the early friendlies. Hatton, Ure, even Osmond in flashes. But let's be realistic. Only a couple will probably break into the first team this season. And even then, it'll likely be for domestic cup games or in emergencies. But that's okay. The point is that there's a pathway. Show up in preseason, make your case, and you'll be in the manager's thoughts. Francis Turley, for example, played a bit more advanced and showed some promise. His movement, willingness to get on the ball, you can see there's something there. Same with Kyle Ure. Really composed, clever left foot, always looking to break. Lines. You want young players like that to feel like they've got a chance. You never know when an injury crisis or suspension might open a door. And if they're sharp and ready, they can take their moment. Now, the Stephen Welsh situation really puts that into perspective. Here's a guy who's been part of the first team setup for a while, had opportunities, was probably on his way out this summer. And now with that shoulder popping again, he's facing surgery and potentially missing a huge chunk of the season. Football's cruel sometimes. 1 minute you're lining up to try and impress the next, your whole season's question. Brendan made it clear it's a serious one, and if it's the fourth time the shoulder's gone, then something more permanent needs to be done. If it's a reconstruction, we could be talking 9 months or more. And that raises tough questions. Is there still a place for him in the long term? Will any interested clubs wait for his recovery? It's gutting. You just hope he gets back on his feet soon. That's the fine margins we're dealing with. One door closes and maybe another opens for someone else. That's the reality of preseason. Everyone's trying to take their chance, prove they belong, and Brendan's not one to hand. Outspots for nothing. Oh, you gotta earn it even if you're a fan favorite or a seasoned pro. Then there's the transfer chat. Not much movement in terms of incomings this week, and Brendan was pretty cagey when asked. Just said things are progressing. We know. The club's looking at another center back, possibly another left back, depending on how Inamura settles, and definitely someone with attacking spark. But names are being kept tight for now. No panic, but you want to see some action soon, especially with the season opener only a few weeks away. One positive we can cling to is the return of identity in the way Celtic are trying to play. Quick passes, aggressive pressing, fullbacks tucking in and pushing forward. You can see Rodgers' fingerprints all over it. Even the young lads are being asked to play that way. And while it wasn't perfect against Cork, the intent was there. The ball was moving forward, players were taking risks, and the shape was clear. Compare that to how things ended last season. I know, slow build-up, side-to-side possession, no urgency in the final third, and it's like night and day. That lack of cutting edge cost us big trophies. It wasn't just about results, it was about attitude. Playing not to lose instead of playing to win. Brendan seems determined to change that, and based on the early signs, the message is getting through. The next few weeks are going to tell us everything. Who's fit, who's sharp, who's ready. We'll see which of the new signings settle quickest, which positions still need strengthening, and whether this team's got the mentality to push forward. The fixtures are tough, the heat is unforgiving, and expectations are sky high. But that's what it means to be Celtic. No easy rides, no shortcuts. You build, you graft, and you rise to the challenge. So now all eyes turn to Portugal. Saturday morning might not be a glitzy, fan-filled occasion, but for the squad, it's a vital step. Is where combinations will be tested, fitness will be stretched, and the manager will start penciling names into that starting lineup for the real thing. Whether it's Tierney's return, Carter Vickers' comeback, or another B-team lad making a name for himself, it's all part of the bigger picture. And hopefully the lads remember to pack the factor 50, because from the sound of it, our training in that Portuguese sun will be no joke. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic. FC fans, there's a fresh murmur running through the east end of Glasgow, and this time it's wearing the unmistakable smile of BOJAN MIOVSKI. Word on the street, and now confirmed by the club, is that Celtic have pulled a fast one, announcing the capture of the North Macedonian striker in a move few, if any, saw coming. While the rumblings had been faint, a whisper here, a hint there, no one really believed the Hoops would make a concrete move for Aberdeen's talisman. But late last night, the Parkhead side set social media alight with an official unveiling, catching pundits and punters equally off guard. MIOVSKI, who spent the last 2 seasons impressing at Pittodrie with his lethal finishing and tireless work rate, now finds himself in the green and white with the Celtic faithful daring to dream of what he might bring to the front line. It's a curious bit of business. Some are calling it a gamble. Others are already hailing it as the coup of the summer. Either way, the move has everyone talking. Brendan Rodgers has been quiet this window, focusing more on shoring up the back than adding up front. But this signing suggests a shift in priorities, or perhaps a response to growing concerns over the squad's attacking depth. MIOVSKI bagged 16 league goals last season. often carrying the Dons single-handedly through tight fixtures. His movement, his instinct in the box, and his coolness under pressure have made him a fan favorite in the Northeast. And now, Celtic supporters will hope that same form translates under the bright lights of paradise. The whispers now are around how MIOVSKI will fit into Rodgers' system. Is this a replacement, a rotation piece, or the first step in a bigger reshuffle up top? Could Kyogo be on the move? Or is this simply Celtic adding much-needed firepower for a campaign that will include domestic defense and a crack at Europe? No one's saying much for now. But one thing's for sure, Celtic's surprise swoop has shaken things up, and Parkhead just got a lot more interesting. Hello, fan! Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.